Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So, I run a business selling fire and EMS, emergency medical services supplies. Because this crosses over into some civilian education CPR training, we have quite a few civilian customers. One of them has only placed 2 orders with us for 2 years. The order is for CPR training valves. These are plastic pieces that go on a face mask for mouth-to-mouth training. They are cheap alternatives to using the actual one-way valves that come with a mask. They used to come tin to a box and just sat loose in the box. The manufacturer changed the packaging to be more hygienic. They come in a sealed Ziploc style bag and are individually wrapped. So this customer placed 2 orders with us a full year and a half after her first. A good year into the packaging changeover, she orders 1,600 of these valves. We don't keep that many in stock, so we have them drop shipped from the manufacturer. 2 weeks after they are delivered, we get a phone call from the buyer. We sent her a completely different item, and this is not what she wanted. She wanted a full refund and for us to pay for return shipping. I ask her what is wrong with the products, and she states that they come in bags and she wants them in a box. I explain they don't come in a box anymore. This woman doubles down and insists that I'm cheating her. I ask why she insists on having them in a box, and she says this way she can just put them on a table and have people pick one out as they grab the other training material. Talk about unhygienic. I explained to her that she can just take them out of the bags and put them in a shoebox or any box and still accomplish the same thing. Nope, she wants them in a box. If I can't send them in a box, then she wants her money back. I again explained that no manufacturer offers them in a box anymore. They all went to the more hygienic packaging. This woman is being a complete witch, so I do something I never do. In writing, we state our return policy is that they pay a 20% restocking fee for all the returns. Again, I have, in 15 years at the time, never enforced this policy. I have also never encountered such a raging witch. Since the item is not defective, I told her I would not refund shipping either, and she could pay for return shipping. This crazy woman said fine, they were useless anyway. This crazy woman lost $350 in shipping and had to pay another $350 to ship it to me and had over a $400 restocking fee. In the end, it cost her almost $1,200 and she had nothing to show for it. Some sweet payback. I just then sold out the inventory now, with a little extra inventory on each. Here is my story. I live in one of those middle-of-nowhere desert towns where almost everyone knows almost everyone, and it's so hot here, but they're cheap to buy a home or land in. It's not uncommon for old cars to last out here as they almost never rust and people keep fixing them. After high school, I worked hard at a local job to get my own place. I ended up buying a small plot of land with a trailer on it off a local guy that decided he was going to move to Texas. And the guy also sold me his old Ford Escort prior to this. It was an okay first car, got me around well enough, and still have it too. 10 years have gone by since then, and for a while I spent a lot of my time tinkering with an old 87 Monte Carlo that I bought super cheap as it was without an engine or transmission. I loved that car, as an older cousin of mine had one when I was a kid, and I always wanted one of my own. I spent 2 years fixing up the one I got with help from some friends and finished it in 2019. Since the engine was missing, I dropped in a junkyard Chevy 305 V8 that was connected to a rebuilt 4-speed automatic transmission with low miles from a totaled car. Then I painted it myself inside a friend's garage with a Harbor Freight sprayer and some GM Black single stage gloss paint and puffed it to a shine. Also, I finished it up with some gold Monte Carlo decals and some classic moon rims I bought from the local junkyard and polished up. I also partially redid the interior by replacing the seats and put in a custom steering wheel. I'm not really a mechanic, but my friends all helped me. And online how-to videos on my smartphone really helped as well. The car was fun to drive and looked good, and I kept it in good order. That is until this mess went down. Now, I didn't really trust some of the local law enforcement out here before, and this gave me even more reason not to. A lot of the cops around here are barely qualified for their job. They are practically hired with a handshake and just told to play Doom for training. Granted though, many of them are really nice. The sheriff is even kind of friend of mine, but he's really one of the only competent ones there. Most of the rest really don't do their jobs very well, especially whenever a new one gets hired on. Like a guy that went out of his way to move to my town just to get to be a cop. In this case, he was a nephew of the sheriff. He even brought his own Crown Vic with a loudspeaker to drive around town in. Let's refer to this guy as the nephew cop since he was a sheriff's nephew. The nephew cop and I didn't know each other personally yet, but I was aware of him. He was dumb as a rock and high on his own ego. It was like as if Barney Fife and John Cena had an illegitimate son together, because he was a tall, strong-looking man that was always giving people creepy looks and patrolled on foot up and down Main Street with a clipboard in hand and a big grin on his face. He also liked to publicly flex his muscles in front of people. One Saturday morning, I took my Monte Carlo out to meet a friend, but they ended up bailing because of a last-minute issue with their girlfriend. I thought, meh, no problem. I'll just get some fast food and go home. I went to the local burger place and got a meal to go, and as I was walking out, there was a lady outside looking over my car. People would stop here and there to ask me about my car and where I got it. I usually don't mind talking so long as they are polite, though this woman ended up being anything but that. She seemed in early to mid-30s or so, not really sure. I asked her if she liked my car, and she stood up, took one look at me and snickered. I asked her what was so funny. To get an idea of what I looked like at the time, I was a skinny guy with a scraggly beard and was wearing a faded AC/DC t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off, along with a worn-out cut-off denim shorts and flip-flops. I guess she figured I was poor or something, so she was probably judging my appearance. She looked me up and down in a very obvious way, and then she said, "There is no way this is your car. You couldn't possibly afford something this nice." Now, I have a tendency to get sarcastic or snide when people make assumptions about me. So I said back, "Oh really, lady? The title is in my name, and these keys right here in my hand say I am the owner too." Karen just glared at me as I put the keys in a lock and began to open the door. I looked behind her and noticed a beige 90s Volvo with a missing headlight and had out-of-state plates on it parked not too far from me. I put two and two together and laughed. "Let me guess, lady, that's your car over there?" She started to turn beet red. I laughed and said, "Oh, don't be ashamed. Those things aren't lookers, but they will run forever." I figured this was over, but as I was opening my car door, I suddenly felt her nails digging into my shoulder. She was screeching so loud my ears were hurting, and before I could turn around, she kicked me between my legs from behind with a high-heeled shoe so hard I collapsed in agony. And true to my luck, the nephew cop drove right up because he'd heard her screeching from down the street during his noon patrol. As soon as he was out of his car, Karen ran to him crying and saying that I was a carjacker that was attempting to take her new car. I wasn't looking at either of them as I was on the ground wincing in a fetal position from the pain. The next thing I heard was the nephew cop yelling, "Put your hands behind your back," and then I was pinned down by his knee on my spine and forcibly cuffed. I tried telling him that I knew his uncle and can prove I'm the real owner of the car, but he called me white trash and told me to shut up. Then he picked my keys up off the ground and actually handed them to Karen. Then he seemed to do a hero pose while she gave me a big grin. No matter what I said, he wasn't listening to me because he fully believed her, and then I had to see Karen start up my car and drive off with it. My heart sank as I watched it sail down the road with her laughing at me. Then the nephew cop dragged me back to the sheriff's office. I'd hoped his uncle was in, but just my bad luck he was out to lunch. So the nephew cop put me in the cell and told me to keep quiet. Oh, I was pissed. But I knew I wasn't going to make my situation any better, so I just waited. And during that time, the nephew cop kept giving me looks of contempt. At one time, he walked across the cell with a nightstick, grazing it against each bar like he was trying to intimidate me. At least an hour went by and the sheriff finally came in through the door nursing a big gulp, but froze the second he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I was about to speak when his nephew jumped in and said, "I caught this low-life creep trying to steal a lady's car, so I hauled him in." And that's when I finally got my chance to speak and I said, "Yeah, only it was my car, the one you know I spent so long fixing up." The nephew cop just rolled his eyes and said not to listen to me, but the sheriff silenced him and asked for my full story. As I tried to tell it, his nephew was making dismissive looks and kept repeatedly interrupting until the sheriff told him to sit down and shut up. Then, when I was finally able to say everything that happened, he was furious. The sheriff laid into his nephew, who was cowering in a chair like a little boy and saying that it indeed was my car, and he stupidly gave my keys to a thief that had assaulted me. The nephew cop started frantically apologizing and trying to say he was just trying to help, but the sheriff called him an idiot that just wanted to play hero by saving a damsel in distress. And now the whole department will be in hot water for his unlawful arrest and physical assault against me. When he finally let me out of the cell, I got some ice to put it where she hit me and got taken home. The sheriff and his nephew went back to the burger restaurant, but Karen's car was no longer there. They got the CCTV footage from the camera the restaurant had looking outside. It got everything minus the audio. Karen came back riding piggyback with a guy on a motorcycle over a half hour from the time she left with my car. She blew him a kiss and then drove off in her Volvo. The sheriff scrambled everyone, even the nephew, to try and chase her down, but they couldn't find her as she'd already driven out of the county lines. Some phone calls were made to other departments to look for her, and I had to sit at home with an ice pack all evening waiting for the news on what happened. A couple days later, my car was found just a few miles out of town. Karen had broken all of the windows with what I'm assuming was a tire iron, and then put the car in neutral and let it coast down a deep rocky hill, which rolled it into the bottom ditch, which smashed the front end and warped the frame. It was completely totaled. I wanted to cry from the sound of metal grinding on rock as the tow truck pulled it back up. The nephew cop was there too, and he couldn't even look at me the entire time. My insurance also didn't want to cover the car, so the sheriff's office was made to pay me the value of my Monte Carlo instead, since the nephew cop let it happen, which was only about $5 grand. Though that was honestly close to what I had put into it since I did almost all the work by hand with the help of my friends. The nephew cop also paid me another $2,000 for my trouble and said it was most of his savings. Karen was caught at a motel a state over some time later and arrested for drug possession. Grand theft auto was just one of many things she was charged with. I got on a video call just to see her in court and testify. She looked like a wreck the whole time because she knew she was screwed, and it wasn't long before she was pronounced guilty. She got 10 years behind bars with no possibility of parole. As for the nephew cop, the sheriff all but begged me not to sue him because he was his nephew and he promised his sister he'd look out for the guy. I'm not a person who goes around suing people and being happy about it, so I let it go, and the nephew cop actually started taking some sort of course on how to properly do his job. And so the incident was more or less frog swept, and the nephew cop was demoted to sitting at a desk all day answering phones. And they will be docking part of his pay until every penny was paid back. He's still regulated to desk duty half of the time these days, and he still avoids me anytime I'm near him. Arguably, he's a better cop now though, because he mellowed out. As for me, it took some time, but with help I finally located the replacement Monte Carlo project car with a clean title. And it was the same year too. I salvaged as many parts as I could from my old one and used it all in the build. The engine and transmission were still good, and somehow so were most of the base parts. And the sheriff personally came by to help my friends and I build a new car in his downtime. It took a year, but now I've got a fresh looking Monte Carlo that looks just like my old one. You would never know they were in the same car. I've made sure to have better insurance this time around, and I'm never letting a Karen near my car again. I have 4 kids. Alexis, 15, Lucas, 12, Ronnie, 11, and Ali, 8. Alexis has a lot of health issues. We've been in and out of the hospital for months. Something important to know is that Alexis has a Pixabay, big take-home IV, and is getting blood thinner injections every day, so we do have needles and vials around the house. She also occasionally gets pain mid through her PICC line. My sister has 2 kids, Andrew, 12, and Alyssa, 9. She brought them to the house to play with my kids not too long ago. Alexis had a minor procedure a couple of days before they came. I was showing my sister a video of Alexis at the house right after the procedure, and she was still very high, and it was hilarious. She is fine with me showing family these videos, by the way. So Andrew came into the kitchen, heard the video, and asked what it was. I said that I was just showing his mom a video of Alexis after she got some pain meds. A few hours later, the kids were grabbing a snack, and Andrew took the container with needles and vials of the blood thinner out of the pantry. He asked what it is, and I said it's Alexis's medicine. My sister and I left to take our dogs for a walk, and I wanted to get a snack out of the pantry when we came back. I noticed Alexis's medicine box was moved, so I looked at it, and one of the blood thinner vials was a lot more empty than before, and the needle/syringe was missing. Sister and I interrogated all of the kids, and we found out Andrew gave himself a high dose of the blood thinner because he thought it was her pain meds and he wanted to get high. My sister rushed Andrew to the hospital and he stayed overnight. Now she's sending me the hospital bill because I was the one that left the medicine where he could get it. I am refusing to pay because if my 11 and 12-year-old boys and 8-year-old girl know not to touch other people's medicines, her 12-year-old should be able to see a vial and a syringe and not drug himself. She's threatening to sue, and I really don't want to go the legal route with this. Am I the jerk for not paying the hospital bills? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying you're not the jerk. Yes, it's exactly as you said. Your sister has a huge problem, and it has nothing to do with a 12-year-old who doesn't know not to touch other people's medicine. No, actually it's worse than that. Andrew knew what he was doing was wrong, but was motivated to do it anyway and to get high. Another commenter adds, not the jerk. Your nephew made a very big mistake. He stole your child's medication with the intent to get high. He's old enough to know better than to steal someone's medication, and your sister needs to get in front of this quickly before she ends up with an addict on her hands. The third commenter goes with, not the jerk. But your sister needs to know she has a bigger problem than a hospital bill, and that is her son. He needs to be put in therapy straight away to get to the bottom of why he wanted to 1. Get high, and 2. Get attention. But I do believe you should put such medicine in an unreachable place and far away from the kids, and it shouldn't have been accessible that easily in the first place, to be honest.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.